Hi friends, let's sing our getting ready song so that we are ready to hear our story today. God welcomes all strangers and friends. God's love is strong and it never ends. God welcomes all strangers and friends. God's love is strong and it never ends. All right, my friends, we have been in the season of Lent. We use the color purple for this season. That's the color that we use for getting ready. And we have been getting ready to enter the mystery of Easter. All right, so I'm going to put out our purple cloth. This is week 6, and the church gives us 6 weeks to get ready to enter this mystery. So today we get to hear almost the whole story. Okay. So, in the beginning of our story, a baby was born. The Word had become a wordless child. And the mother Mary and the father Joseph, they took care of baby Jesus. Just like your parents took care of you when you were a baby. And every time Jesus looked into the face of his parents, he could see the cross. All right. So the baby grew and became a boy of about 12. And when Jesus was 12, they had gone to the city of Jerusalem to celebrate a high holy day. And on the way home, his parents realized that he wasn't with them. And they freaked out. And they went back to the city. They went back through the gates of the city to look for Jesus. And they looked on the streets. They looked in the place where they had slept. They looked in the marketplace. And they finally went to the temple. And that is where they found Jesus. And Jesus was talking to the priests and the rabbis, and he was listening to them because he wanted to know more. But you know what? They also were listening to Jesus because he knew so much. And Jesus' parents said, "Jesus, what were you doing? What were you thinking?" And that is a question that kids never can answer, can they? And Jesus said, "Didn't you know I would be in my Father's house?" Well, their house was in Nazareth. And so they didn't understand what Jesus meant. And even though they didn't understand, they would never forget those words. All right. So Jesus grew and became a man. And one time he went to the River Jordan where his cousin John was baptizing people. John was a wild man. And Jesus waded into that water, and he got face to face with his cousin John. And suddenly it was as if John was seeing him for the first time. And Jesus said, "Baptize me." And John said, "Me baptize you? You are the Messiah, the one we've been waiting for. You should baptize me." And Jesus said, "No, it is written that you were to come and prepare the way for me. You need to baptize me." And so John did. John took him down into the deep, the dark, chaotic waters, and he brought him into the light. And people who were there that day said that they saw a form like a dove come near Jesus. And other people said they heard a voice, and this voice said, "This is my son, my beloved. With him I am well pleased." So Jesus came out of the river, and he headed to the desert, where he was going to spend 40 days and 40 nights figuring out what his work was to be. So Jesus went to the desert. And we know that the desert is a wild place, right? It's a place where there's not much to eat and not much to drink. And Jesus was there for 40 days and 40 nights. And while he was there, this voice came to him 3 times. And the first time the voice said, "Why don't you take one of those stones and turn it into bread?" And Jesus said, "Humans need more than bread to survive." And then it was as if Jesus was on top of the temple. And this voice came to him and said, "Why don't you jump off and see if God will send God's angels to catch you?" And Jesus said, "No, we do not need to test God." And then a third time this voice came. And this voice, it was as if Jesus could see all the kingdoms of the world. And this voice said, "If you follow me, I will make you king of all these kingdoms." And Jesus said, "I am to be king, but not that kind of king." And the voice went away. Jesus left the desert and he headed back to do his work. All right, and that brings us to the story of what Jesus' work was to be. Jesus' work was to come close to people, especially the people that no one else wants to come close to. So here we see a picture of how close Jesus was to this man who was blind. Jesus was so close that he touched the blind man's eyes, and the man could see. When Jesus came close to people, they could see things that they'd never seen before. They could do things that they'd never done before. They became well. So Jesus knew that another way that Jesus taught was to use parables. And Jesus knew that it was time for he himself to become a parable. All right, I have a lot to tell you about this week. This is the week that we call Holy Week. And so we get to talk about the whole week leading up to the mystery of Easter. Jesus went to Jerusalem for the last time. It was Passover, and there were people from all different lands in the city. They thought that Jesus was coming to be king, but they weren't paying attention. Jesus didn't ride into the city on a great white horse. Jesus wasn't carried by soldiers. Jesus came in on a donkey, and it wasn't even his. It was a donkey that he had borrowed. But the people, they waved palm branches and they laid them in the streets, which is what they would do for a king. So on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week, Jesus went to the temple to teach. And each evening, he would go to the Mount of Olives with his friends, with the 12. People whispered, they watched, and they whispered that the Mount of Olives was the place where angels were going to come and make an army to drive out the Roman soldiers. One day when Jesus was teaching in the temple, he said, "Do you see that old woman over there? She's going to put something in the money box." But they couldn't even hear when she put her money in because it was the smallest coin that there was. And then Jesus said, "Do you see this rich man who's coming in? He has so much money that he needs help carrying it." And when the rich man put his money in the money box, it made this loud clanging because there was so much money. And then Jesus said, "Who do you think gave the most?" And some people that he was teaching thought that the old woman had given the most because she gave everything she had. And some people thought that the rich man had given the most. The temple guards said, on Thursday we will take him. But that evening, they couldn't find Jesus. Jesus and the 12 had hurried through the dark streets to a house, and they went up the stairs to a room where they shared a meal together. And after they had had all that they wanted to eat, Jesus took some bread that was left over, and he said some words, something like this: "Friends, when you have bread and you share it together like this, I will be there." And then he took a glass of wine and he poured some wine into that glass, and he said, "And when you are together and you share a glass of wine, I will be there." Jesus was always saying things like this that they didn't understand. And even though they didn't understand these words or know why he was saying them, they never forgot. And then Judas got up and left, and the rest of them, they sang a song together. And then they went to the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. Well, Jesus wanted to pray, and so he prayed, and then he joined his friends. And while they were there, Judas came out, and he gave Jesus a kiss. And that was a signal to the temple guards that it was time to take Jesus. The guards, they came out of the shadows, and they took Jesus away into the darkness. And the 12 went away into the darkness as well. All right, my friends, now is the time when you get to talk to God. And I tell you every week that you don't have to wait until this candle is lit to talk to God, that you can talk to God anytime, anywhere. This is just a reminder. So I'm going to light this candle right now. And we're just going to take a deep breath. I'm going to say thank you, God, for video chats with my friends. I wonder if you have been using interesting ways to stay connected to your friends and family at this time. Maybe your teachers. Maybe that's how you've seen your teachers this week, the last couple weeks. So thank you, God, for teachers and the work that they do. Thank you, God. We have lots to be thankful for, even in a strange time, don't we? Lots to be thankful for. Okay, I'm going to change the light, and that the smoke is going to be another reminder for us. That is a reminder that God is everywhere. All right, let's sing our going song, and then we will pass the peace to each other. All right? Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. All right, my friends, that is your blessing. May God, the peace of God, surround you everywhere you go.
And also with you.
Oh, I didn't say it. May the grace and peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you.
All right, let's share peace with one another in whatever way that you can. I will see you next week, my friends. Have a blessed, holy week, and I will see you next week.